Our dear guests, dear viewers, and fellow citizens, a good afternoon and welcome back to your favorite series, the Inter-University Debate Show. My name is Sharon Mukisa, your host for this particular episode. Today's topic is the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961, and we shall be looking at the 30 years of the Constitution. On our panel today, we have guests who are educators. They are students and advocates from St. Lawrence University. We are very happy to have you. I'll be introducing each one of them. Firstly, we have Abishon. Alex, we are very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you, moderator.
And next we have a lady, Leah Magova. We are very happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Next we have Kasima John. We are pleased to have you on the show today.
Thank you, moderator.
And next, certainly not least, is Sarah.
Thank you. I'm also happy to be here.
Okay, so for today's conversation, we are going to dive into the significant milestones that have shaped Uganda's democracy, and we're going to look at factors that contribute to lack of credibility in the electoral process in Uganda. So the panel is going to discuss with us and give their view on each of these points. So firstly, before we dive deep into this question, we need to understand the history, the path of how Uganda is now a democratic country, a multi-party country. So starting off with the history, Alex, please take us through.
Thank you, our fellow citizens and the moderator. My name is called Abishon Alex once again. Now, I'm going to talk about the historical path that Uganda has taken when it comes to the issue of elections, politics, and democracy. Now, before I talk about the historical context of Uganda in that terms, I want us to define some key things that will give our citizens understanding of what we're doing today. There are three key points that I want to define. One is politics, two is democracy, and then three, elections. Now, politics to me, I define it as the art of managing society. In it, you use skillful knowledge to hold power, influence resources for the benefit of the people. That's one thing that I consider with my definition of politics. Then elections is a legal framework and a process that citizens take to elect their leaders. Which leaders are to be politicians, which politicians are to influence the resources of the particular citizens for the betterment of the citizens. That's what I define elections. Now, democracy. Democracy is basically a government system where the power in a country lies with the people. And Abraham Lincoln defines it as the government of the people, by the people, for the people, and with the people. That's what democracy is. Now, taking us back to Uganda's history in the political arena, we find that if we want to talk about Uganda's history in that political sphere, we need to look into the insurgencies and happenings of the 1954. That is to say the upcoming and the upcoming and then the creation of the Legislative Council. The Legislative Council of the 1954 was the first incident that we had people elected, but it was an incident where people were appointed. It was the first incident that Africans were appointed into the council by then, because Uganda was a British protectorate, and it was the British that controlled and governed Uganda at large. So the major influence was in the Baganda Kingdom, but then during the Legislative Council of 1954, we found out that people were appointed, the first Africans were appointed to be part of the council in shaping the governance of the country. Then we come to 1958. Now this was where a broader aspect comes in. Now the citizens were involved at regional levels, bringing representatives to come and vote. And it was where now Uganda had its first electoral and the first event that made the citizens of Uganda to participate in electing their leaders. So it was a federal system still, but then it took us also to the 1961 elections. Now the post-independence elections, which happened, and in it we had political parties, different political parties, because when we're talking about democracy, we also talk about the freedom of expression, association, and of identity with political parties. So we had the UPC, we had the DP, and then by then the Kabaka Ikapat was not formed. So now when you look at this historical context of 1954 to 1961, you get to know that as these elections were being done, the Baganda Kingdom and the Kabaka boycotted all these elections. These are significant events that shape our governance. They boycotted elections. Now, the boycott significantly influences what we call political divisions and brings out what we call hatred in politics. Because by then, Baganda formed the biggest bloc of the political entity in Uganda. And their boycott was because they wanted to be treated superior to others. They wanted to talk directly to the British government. They never wanted to be part of the Ugandans at large, forming an assembly to constitute the governance of the country. So the boycott brought what we call division, which division, even up to now, is significant. That the other parts of the country look at the Bagandans as to some kind of people when it comes to politics. So now, in 1961, elections were done, and it was federal, that we had the prime minister and we had a government. Now, not a government, but the president. Now, when you talk of the president, by then it was a ceremonial head, and then the prime minister acts as the one who takes charge of governance in the country. So by then we had Kabaka as the president, the ceremonial head of the country, and then we also had Milton Obote, who came as the prime minister. So at first, we had Benedicto Kiwanuka, who came in 1961, but then in 1963, because the Kabaka and Obote had an alliance, they had to say that the position of Benedicto Kiwanuka, which he won through the 1961 elections, was illegitimate because it was more of Catholics and the other Ugandans rather than the Buganda kingdom. So now Obote had to live by the political environment of that time to ensure that he achieves his ambitions. He had an alliance with the Kabaka. Now, that takes us to the 1962 elections. In 1962, before independence, we had elections also. Now, that elections had also multi-party. We had the UPC, we had the DP, and then that's where now we see the Kabaka Ikapat. It comes in there. So, as we delve into that, elections were held. They were successfully done, but still Buganda Kingdom boycotted elections. 1962. They had to talk directly to the British government for them to send 21 representatives to the National Assembly. So that also still brings in the question of division, hate in politics. And then it takes us to 1963. In 1963, we also had elections that were done in our country. Now, as these elections were done, we had no legal framework. We had no constitution that was there legally. But by then, we used, let's say the Ugandans used the 1900 Buganda Agreement. They used what we call Uganda Order in Council, that is of 1902. And then we came to 1955, whereby we had the Cohen's Constitution. And then now, by 1962, we had the 1962 Independence Constitution, which offered for Uganda a federal system of governance, still where a prime minister is the head of the country, and also we had the president. Now in 1963, the multi-party politics occurred. Obote comes in and wins as the prime minister. The Kabaka still sits as the president because for him he talked directly to the British government and for the Bagandas to be appointed. Now, what happens there is Obote and Kabaka, they make an alliance. Now this alliance continued to reign. Reaching 1964, we know that Obote back then used to use the army to control the state. And his general was Idi Amin Dada. Now in 1964, a report came to the Kabaka, stating that Idi Amin Dada was black dealing in Congo, stealing gold, stealing minerals actually. And then when it comes to the National Assembly, one of the ministers of Obote tries to ask for Obote to probe for investigations. But now, that when it reached Idi Amin, it became a threat. And then Obote had to also politically stay away from the Kabaka and come to stay with Idi Amin, in a way that he influences now Idi Amin, because Idi Amin got that popularity, to what attack the kingdom, the Buganda kingdom at Mengo. So now, when Idi Amin attacked the kingdom and he took over, that now brought the overthrow of Kabaka, which made Kabaka to what? To run, actually to take asylum in Britain in 1963, 1964. Now, that's fair. That political period brought a lot of tensions. There was loss of life, there was hate, there was division. That also came depending on who was leading those activities by then. So now, from 1964 up to 1967, we had Obote as the presidential head, as the state head. He was the one who now led Uganda as the president. And then he worked hand in hand with Idi Amin Dada. Now what happened was like this. Obote overthrew Kabaka and he came up with what we call the Republican Constitution in 1967. And in the Republican Constitution, the office of the Prime Minister was not brought low. He elevated himself as the president and called himself the state head. Now that alone brought also a lot of division, whereby the Bagandas looked at Obote and where he came from negatively. So there was that tension that we had in our country. Now, when it reached that state, Obote now had to connive with the army by then to rule. So the governance of Obote was more of conflict, violence, than it will have been today. And people were dissatisfied that they wanted him to go. So now, people down there had to talk to Idi Amin Dada about what Obote was doing. And Idi Amin Dada, based on his influence and his fame, his popularity, now he had to come up with a mind in 1967, when now Obote went to Singapore for the Commonwealth meeting. And then Idi Amin Dada overthrows him. Now after overthrowing Idi Amin, after overthrowing Obote, Uganda became a dictatorial government, a dictatorial state, whereby Idi Amin Dada dictates on what to do. The constitution that was brought, the Republican Constitution was taken away. Idi Amin Dada became the constitution himself. So now, it was not easy that all of us who have heard stories about the reign of Idi Amin Dada from 1979 up to 1980, we all attest to the fact that it was not easy because there was too much authoritarianism, there was too much dictatorship. Now, in Idi Amin's reign, there was no political party. It was only his government, which means there we lost democracy. We lost democracy. So we became a dictatorship country that lacked democracy. Then Obote now comes with an alliance of the Tanzanian government in 1979, 1980, overthrows Idi Amin, comes back and restores democracy by bringing up multi-party politics. And that's where also we see the UPC government coming up greatly under the leadership of Museveni. So in 1980, we had elections, another significant event, elections in 1980, whereby the elections were successfully done, and then Obote won. But his winning was allocated to be out of bribery, too much use of military force, incumbent advantage, using state resources for his benefit. And that brought dissatisfaction to our current president, His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, and that made him to run to the bush. So from 1980 up to 1985-86, we had the Bush War, led by the NRA, the National Resistance Army, under the leadership of Museveni. So now, that war happened because of how Obote's government was too also dictatorial when he came back. Then, Museveni comes in back in 1986, overthrows Obote, takes up power. Now, he takes up power under what we call the One Movement Party. Yes, they were political parties, but they did not practice their political practices. So now, in 1986, there was a major election that was organized. We had the DP, we had the UPC, and then they contested. Those were the main contesting political parties. But in the elections, you don't identify with the political party. You identify as an individual. So it was the One Movement Party. And Museveni won it, 1986. Now, in 1986, we now shift to another thing. There we see the likes of Kizza Besigye now coming in. Now, in 1986, we lacked a constitution because Idi Amin eroded the Republican Constitution. Now we come to 1994, whereby we the Ugandan government under the leadership of President Museveni constituted what we call the Constitutional Assembly, the CA, which involved people, the youth, civil society, and different people from different parties to come up with a constitution that will benefit the whole country. And there we see a significant event of also restoring democracy because people were involved, there was inclusion. That led us to the 1995 constitution, which is now the current constitution that we have. And in it, we find that in Article 60, that's where we established the Electoral Commission. So now, in 1995, the constitution comes out. It takes us to 1996 elections. 1996, there were elections that were done. But still, elections were under the one-party movement, whereby you identify as a presidential candidate, but not with your party, because it was the national dissident movement that was now in charge by then. So, Kizza was now the one that had the upper hand against Museveni in the competition. But Museveni wins it 1996. But still, Kizza comes alleging that there was bribery, there was rigging, there was that use of incumbent advantage, the military forces, for the benefit of the president. So when we look at that, we see that historically, we had all this that brought dissatisfaction in our electoral processes. So now it takes us to 2001 elections. 2001, the elections were done. Still, Kizza came up as the highest opponent that could oppose the president. Now, when he came in 2001, during that very day of elections, Kizza Besigye was abducted, was in prison in 2001. So now, we also see that by then, the government also used what you call the incumbent advantage, using state resources, state power for their benefit. And it takes away the real definition of democracy, because if democracy is the coming of the people by the people, it means you're supposed to give the people to be the ones to choose. And in giving people to choose the leaders, you don't use the military in that way for your benefit as an incumbent person. It takes us now back to 2005.
Alex, I want to ask a follow-up question.
Yes, yes.
You mentioned 1994,
Yes.
where the constitution comes in, and you said Museveni comes up at this point and he holds a constitutional assembly and they come up with a constitution that we now have.
Yes.
And this year, the constitution actually makes 30 years.
Yes, yes.
So we are commemorating 30 years of the Constitution. So a follow-up question on what you have been explaining to us. Do you believe that the Constitution now has delivered its promise of free and fair elections?
Personally, I don't believe, because what the Constitution has is more in written than it is in action. Yes, the constitution is nice. It has given us that we are supposed to have free, fair, transparent, accountable elections. But the practice since then up to date shows that we lack that fairness. We lack that credibility that we can give to the constitution. Yes, to some extent, to a lesser extent, it has given us, because we have political parties, we have candidates coming to compete, we do elect, we participate in voting. Yes, that is there. But how? What is the quality of our participation? What is the quality of our engagement? It's what is lacking. So now, to answer that directly, I would say, to a greater extent, at a percentage of 80, we have not got what the Constitution has given us. Because over and over again, there must come out results that people doubt. People come and criticize the results of presidential elections. And then the electoral processes are characterized with brutalism, violence, voter intimidation, opponent abduction. So now I want to connect this to 2005. In 2005, there was an election. Now here is a great shift that even though the Constitution gave us the freedom for democracy of multi-party politics in 1995, but from 1995 up to 2005, it was not practiced because political parties were not given the chance to exercise their roles as political parties. Now, they were given that in 2005, where now the multi-party politics system was now brought in. And there, we also see another shift in the democracy of Uganda. People were given chance to now come and exercise their political party roles. Now, one key thing that also makes me to go against the Constitution, giving it a less extent of credibility in these 30 years of commemoration, is the fact that they brought in multi-party democracy in 2005. At the same time, they removed the term limit of the president. You see that constitutional shift? You're giving freedom for people to come in. At the same time, you're denying the people the freedom to come in. You get it? So, multi-party democracy was introduced. Different parties came, many people came. But then at the same time, the presidential term limit was removed. That was done to benefit the incumbent government, the ruling government by then. Because if they could have considered what the 1995 Constitution says, they could have not amended the Constitution in favor of the government by that time. So that was unfair to the country. It was truly unfair. Now, in the election 2005, Kizza still comes as the greatest opponent against our current president. And then what happens is the same thing. The results were declared, the president won, but then people complain. It was Kizza who won, it was Kizza who won. Kizza dissatisfies himself, reports, goes to the judiciary, reports to the High Court, to the Supreme Court. He makes an appeal over the presidential results in 2005. But then what happens? The Supreme Court and the judiciary at large, they found out that it is indeed that what he says bears evidence that the electoral process was unfair, was not transparent, was not accountable. But they went on a split ballot to decide that Museveni won it, even though what Kizza presented as evidence was credible enough to show that he won the elections. Now, the question to ask is, constitutionally, is the judiciary independent or not in that shift? Because if Kizza provided evidence and then in 2005, they have confirmed that the evidence is credible enough to see that he has won it against Museveni, why should the judiciary go for a split ballot other than declaring it? So that is another shift. Then 2011, 2016, 2021, the same things continue to happen. And then another major shift was 2021 with Bobi Wine against the current president. So when you look into the history of Uganda politically, in terms of democracy and elections, you find that we have not attained what the Constitution wants us to attain. because majority of things that are being done under the term of incumbent advantage. The ruling party, the ruling government, wanting things to benefit them, looking for longevity, not the real essence of democracy. Look at 2017, whereby the parliament amends the constitution by removing age limit, which was done in favor of the ruling government.
Okay.
So
All
I
right.
want to stop there. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. That has been a very, very vivid explanation of where the history came from through every single stage up to where we are today. Thank you very much. So now, important to note, we cannot talk about elections and not talk about the Electoral Commission. So we need to understand what is the role of the Electoral Commission in this whole election process. We need to understand why people have lost hope in the Electoral Commission processes. And we need to understand what exactly the Electoral Commission has not done right. So with that, we are going to get a vivid explanation from John, who's going to take us through the roles of the Electoral Commission and why do you think people have lost hope in the Electoral Commission processes?
Thank you. My name is John Kasima, currently the chairperson of the debate club at Central University. Now, in 1994-1995, the Parliament of Uganda by then instructs the current Electoral Commission and instructs it to come up with a permanent Electoral Commission. Now, the people who were instructed by then, we had General Kalekaihura, and by then the chairperson was Benjamin Odoch. The person who was in charge, instructed by the Parliament, and we had also General Kalekaihura. We know him, everyone knows General Kalekaihura. He was then, by the two people, the main two people, they were instructed by Parliament. Those were the committee members. So in 1997, they come up with a permanent Electoral Commission. But now, when they came up with it, they came up with a 7-year term. Like after every 7 years, we need to have another Electoral Commission. Now, for them, when they came up with it, they said that we are in charge. They were in charge of all elections, educating Ugandans on elections. That is civic education and blah blah everything. Now, even training them. So let me talk about educating. It means we have to educate someone who's standing to give you your role, and you who is going to vote, you're supposed to know your role. No, we have had incidences. For example, someone comes up to be a member of Parliament, and then if someone has lost, maybe in the village. I come from Eastern Uganda. Someone loses someone in the village, and then you call a member of Parliament that we have lost someone. We need some money. It means, to my understanding, is that when we talk about credibility of the Electoral Commission, is that if someone in rural areas, let me give that instance. Let me take a case study of people in rural areas. In rural areas, they have failed to understand the role of the leaders they're electing. And the leaders not understanding their roles when they have been elected, what they are supposed to do, and what people are supposed to expect from them. So now those were the roles, even registering voters. Now, for the issue of voters registration, just of instance here, when we come to NUP, NUP had presented the signatures for their president. They collect all the signatures. Now, the EC comes, rumors come, the community can know. I don't know how people get information. Now, information comes within the rumors that some signatures are for the dead people, some signatures are missing. You understand? Now, the EC comes and then gives that information, was preparing to give the information on Monday, yet they're supposed to nominate people on Tuesday. Now, the question is now, if we are to credit EC, we have to question its communication skills. For example, when you want to, I've given you maybe 1 month back, I've given you the signatures. Why do you want to communicate to me on Monday when on Tuesday they are supposed to nominate president? So you're giving me, yet in their offices open at 8, they close at 6. Now literally you have given someone 8 hours. And you're telling him, the main offices they're in Kampala, but you're telling him to go to Gulu or Mbarara to look for signatures. Now when you talk about EC, in the way it's supposed to conduct its elections, let's also talk about people, how they're supposed to be registered, voters registration. Now, when we talk about voters registration, up to now, currently as an individual, I don't know where I'm supposed to vote from. Because when I checked my national ID, you have to vote from here. But I received a note that I'm supposed to vote from a different place. But it indicates where I'm supposed to vote from. But a note comes, do you know those papers they give to tell you where you're supposed to go to vote from? From here, where I come from in my village, they normally give those papers. So I'm supposed to vote from another center, but when I check my national ID and the credentials, I'm supposed to vote from somewhere else. So now sometimes we question, EC. So with EC itself for them, by then in 1997, they came up with their Permanent Electoral Commission. Now, they come up with 7-year. Then in under Article 60, they are given a mandate that the president is supposed to appoint the chairperson of EC with approval from Parliament. So it means that after the president appointing, maybe they say you are the chairperson, Parliament is supposed to approve. But we have seen instances where the president appoints and we have not seen a procedure in Parliament that approves the chairperson. Whereby if they appoint, no one questions, people just, we have seen only opposition members coming up only to oppose. But the rest of the members, under NRM, they don't oppose. And another instance is, we have had incidences whereby opposition members, let me talk about Dr. Kizabes J, you talk about Bobby Wine. Now, when it comes to politics, when it comes to politics, why are they over-opposed? So I would like to question EC, that someone is supposed, you have said that you start looking for votes. Now, why are they over-opposed? For instance, just Bobby Wine was using borders. We had, like the current election, we had, apart from this one, where Amriat was walking barefooted. Reason being that he was caned and his shoes were removed by police officers, so he decided to move barefooted until they apologized. So no one opposed, so he decided to move barefooted because no one apologized. So the question is, before we credit EC, what it has done, we should first question the current situation, what is actually happening with EC, before we credit it. Because we have seen all those incidences happening. Now, let's say we are talking about His Excellency Bobby Wine. He comes out, he's supposed to have a tour. Communications have been made. Now, for me, I would ask the EC with the military police. Are they having a connection with military police? Because when you go to Article 62, it indicates that the Electoral Commission is supposed to be independent, without any authority or control of anyone or any authority. Now the question is, who gives authority to the military police, or let me say the police or the army, to criticize or to intimidate the opposition? Because it has always happened on opposition. We have seen on best years times. So, me up to now, I'm advised by my parent, when it comes to voting, hide. Just stay in the house. Then you ask him what? Don't go to vote, just stay. So me myself, I have no right to vote. Why? Even when I want to vote, it's constitutional. I have a right to vote. But when I do that, when I go on the streets to go to look for votes, that day, what do I expect in my mind? Now this is the question. Me, I want to vote. But I would like to tell is that when I want to go to vote, I expect chaos. I expect to find police. And actually, even the dress code had to change. It means if I have my shoe when it's red, that is a different understanding. You get the point? So now I like to question each about that. If me personally, I want to go to vote, before I credit it, I feel intimidated by the past events we have been having. And then secondly, before we credit EC, we have just this morning an article came out about the Speaker of Uganda, Anita Mongo, for her seat, for her to become. There were 4 people that we are told that they don't come from that part, Eastern Uganda, where she's coming on as a member of parliament. You understand? So the question is, EC, why do you give information at the last moment? You come and, because one of the member of parliament came, she was called Akol. She came and said that for her, they called her and told her that for you, you are actually not credible because you don't come from that part of the country where Anita Mongo, which is Bukedia, where Anita Mongo comes from. Which is Bukedia. Now, EC has given them information that day. Like they've got information, they are not already they have already nominated people. And even she said that even in the primaries, it was the same issue with Anita Mong, that her candidate was standing against her. They gave her information. Now look at the strategy people are using. They are using that same strategy that she was given information also, that you are also not a validated member from Bukede. You get? So now, when we talk about EC being independent, yet the president is supposed to appoint. You understand? So for me, I would like to tell EC and the parliament that let it change. The parliament appoint and the president can verify.
To approve.
To approve, you understand?
Yes.
So if the parliament appoints, I know we have 500 members plus of NRM, but it is not going to keep the same system, because even 50 years to come, political parties will keep changing, you understand? So, but if we have that same strategy, we shall have trust. But you cannot tell me that I am the current president of Uganda, and I appoint someone whom I know that will not nominate me or will not announce me as president. It is inborn, even me as a human being. I will not look for someone out of the blue. I will appoint someone I know. You understand? So if parliament appoints and the president approves, that is somehow, when we look at EC, we shall look at EC that we shall see trust in EC.
We shall have a credible system.
Now, under Article 61, whereby the EC is funded by Parliament, has a lot of amendments. For me, I will have one question to EC. If EC is funded, why do we have registration of people who are standing up? Yet we are all Ugandans. They ask for taxes from us. Understand? So it means that if we have someone who is prominent to lead, message on me, I am prominent to lead my constituency. I don't have that money. It means all the ideas I have, they are not going to come out. So all the ideas have, they are not going to come out. Now when you look at EC, you come to 2005 where you remove the term limit. And let me connect it with 2017 where you remove the age limit. For sure, for me, I feel I'm not happy with the political situation, whereby someone can come out of the blue. We have seen presidential cabinets wearing gumboots. I don't know, 18-year-old boys, you have finished senior 6, you're a girl. We are almost on just presidency, 200 plus people. You can imagine that kind of situation we're having in this country, that people have, almost 200 people have registered to become presidents. And the biggest number of people, they are youth. Someone has finished senior 6, but for them in their understanding, because they removed the age limit, we have seen how the EC is receiving people from just out of the blue. You can imagine those people who are coming up. I may be here when like even the next block, their neighborhoods, no one knows them apart from maybe the people they stay in the house. But those are the people taking in papers to come and stand. So you see how EC itself, and I don't know why they actually kept quiet on that issue of 2017 and 2005. Now, when we look at all those incidences, we see that EC was mandated to bring in civic education, but I think it is deliberately not done to the fullest.
Okay, thank you so much, John. We shall be taking a break and we shall be back after 5 minutes to continue our conversation.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back after the break. So far we had dived into the history of our journey to democracy, and also we had looked at the role of the Electoral Commission. What is it doing? What has it done? And what should it do? So John was taking us through that, and we shall let him conclude.
Well, thank you very much. I was talking about civic education. Now, when we talk about educating the public, we first educate the person standing. We also educate the people who are going to vote. Even right now, I can question the members of parliament. Do they know their roles? You can find someone standing when they are constructing a road, even cause cameras to come. Yet we have the Ministry of Transport. Someone starts telling people, I am working, but that is not his role to stand there. Is it his role? So I feel like EC has failed to educate the general public about their roles, and those people that are standing about their roles. But as I conclude, I would like to give my recommendations to EC. For me, I want EC to improve on its transparency and accountability.
Exactly.
On how Biamukama and Aisha Rubega, they should sit down and talk to their team and improve on their transparency and accountability in the Electoral Commission. And even enhance voters and education in rural areas, because we have seen buses of NRM going to rural areas to pick people to go to their centers to vote. You understand? So you are going in a bus of NRM. Is it the right thing to do? That's the question you ask yourself. Because for you may be ignorant, you don't know. So I would like to tell Biamukama and Aisha Lubega, the chairperson and the vice, maybe to sit down with their EC and educate people. Because people in these centers, to my understanding, I know in Kampala, people know what they're supposed to do when it comes to voting. But in those rural areas, people are not educated about what they're supposed to do in everything. So now they should also promote inclusivity, whereby we have people who are deaf, we have people who are disabled. So if they should also bring in people who can interpret when it comes to sign language, they should include even those people. So it should improve, because we have seen where, for sure, honestly, I've never seen a lame member of parliament. Have you seen one? A lame, when someone is disabled and is a member of parliament in Uganda. So we should include those people in when it comes to elections. I've never seen someone who is deaf when he's a member of parliament in Uganda, if I'm not informed maybe. But I've never seen a deaf person, a lame person, when he's a member of parliament in Uganda. So they should improve on inclusivity. We should include those people. They are Ugandans. They need to be what? Improved. They should bring sign language interpreters. They should also conduct regular evaluation. They should be sending their people on ground to evaluate. They should also bring in civic education. So I'd like to thank the organizers of Civic TV for bringing us here. So we are educating the community. So this is a program that should be actually sponsored by the EC. Because according to Article 66, it is being given money by the parliament to conduct all these activities. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, John, for your recommendations and highlighting the roles of the Electoral Commission. So moving on to Leah, having highlighted what the Electoral Commission ought to do, wanted you to help us explain what do you think are the reasons as to why there is lack of credibility within the Electoral Commission?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity granted. And as she has already said, my name is Edith Leah Magova from St. Lawrence University. And if we are to look at the credibility of the Electoral Commission, one, I would love to start by ascertaining that as I speak right now, Ugandans have already lost hope in the credibility of the Electoral Commission, because the loss of credibility hasn't started like currently, it's been happening, and people most of the times just go and be a part of the electoral process just to fulfill it as an obligation, but it is not something they do because they love to do it. Because at the end of it all, we see that the parts take the directions as dictated. Because we see that according to what the country has, the Electoral Commission is seen as an independent body and all those things. But if you're to look at it assertively and analytically, you can truly attest that it is actually dependent on certain people that set rules and set regulations that they should follow. So in the first place, I would love to say that some of the reasons as to why Ugandans have lost credibility, have lost hope in the Electoral Commission of this country. One, I would love to start with a talk about the shrinking political and civic space. Because this is majorly supposed to be spearheaded by the Electoral Commission. But currently, Uganda's democracy has been retrogressing, marked by allegations of electoral irregularities and authoritarian tendencies. And all these things are to blame to the Electoral Commission itself. In the first place, we see that some of, when we are looking at this shrinking thing of the political and civic space, one, when a Ugandan stands out and they try to question the credibility of this Electoral Commission, we see that all these dissident voices are laid down. For as long as you have an issue that is against it, you are laid off, you are treated a certain way. And all these things together have made Ugandans lose the credibility in the Electoral Commission of the country. And additionally, electoral violence. I think the Electoral Commission itself, I actually just do not think it is their obligation as Electoral Commission to set those regulations governing the whole political process in the different areas of the country. But when we are to look at the electoral process in Uganda, it's actually very violent, very terrible. And who is to blame? Because if it is an independent body, it has the audacity to speak up. It has the audacity to question the military. It has the audacity, for as long as it is to do with the electoral process, it has something to say. But we see that the electoral process has turned out to be so violent, and it hasn't just started right now. It's been happening. Look at the 1966 abrogation of the constitution by Obote. We see that because Buganda had become so autonomous a power in the country, and its support was very significant, he had to do away with kingdoms. And this followed the attack of the palace and then the eventual exiling of the Kabaka of Buganda. So all these things have been going on under the watch of the Electoral Commission, and it has amounted into this absolute loss of credibility. So because these things have been happening in a series, even when it comes to these elections that are coming up, 2026, we are expectant of even worse. Because if it was happening back then, where politics wasn't as vigorous as it is right now, when people weren't as ambitious as they are right now, when people's eyes were still blinded, they weren't open enough to discern and see where the country is heading, to discern and see who a potential leader seems to be. So right now, we also look at that, and that violence in the electoral process has led to the loss of credibility in the Electoral Commission. And additionally, there is general mistrust of this institution. General mistrust of this institution. Take a look at this. The Electoral Commission is headed by people that are chosen, this has already been spoken. It has already been aired out by some of my colleagues on the panel. So we see that it is headed by people that are chosen or appointed by the president. And now, how will credibility prevail? How will fairness, how will justice prevail? Yet this very person that is your employer, this very person that is your head, this very person that brought you into the leadership position that you're holding at that very time is actually also a contestant on the ballot. What do you expect of them? Obviously, we see a multitude of loopholes in that process. So the fact that there is that general mistrust in that institution, the Electoral Commission in particular, of course, it is one way it has lost credibility already. Because the public has seen how things have been happening. They have seen, look at the results that are announced at the polling stations and how far they contradict with those that are released at the tally centers. There's a very big difference between those two. Because if someone sat down and started compiling all these things together, you can actually come to a conclusion that yes, such and such an honorable has won over the other. But because it is one central body, it is actually only the Electoral Commission that has the authority to air out the final result. And its final result is not questionable. Because as someone that is a Kano man somewhere there, a layman back there, it is very hard for your voice to be heard. It is very, very hard for your voice to be heard. Very hard. Because who knows you in the first place? And of course, even when some of those people knew you already or they know you already, what positions do you hold? Like, are you influential enough? And even though you're influential enough, are you to the level of the head of the executive, who is the president of the country? So, of course, it is either in his favor or in his favor. So that has led to the loss of credibility in the Electoral Commission. And additionally, there is what we call potential military involvement in the electoral process. Because I want us to be at the same page. The Electoral Commission organizes the elections and everything and how it is supposed to happen, how the entire process is meant to take place. So they know very well that there is meant to be security. But this potential military involvement in the electoral process and everything that happens has posed a threat. It has become a recurring concern that has eroded the trust in the Electoral Commission, because there can be violence at their watch and no one will put hold. You get my point? So this whole thing has resulted into a series of discussions in that line. However, there are no proper answers given. Because in the presence of the military, one, the public is in fear. People are afraid already because they know anything can happen. And it has always been happening. This potential military involvement in the political process. We see that for as long as someone is not in support of the ruling party, because I actually don't want us to like meander around and draw things that are not adding up. But the reality of the matter, for as long as Uganda is concerned and its political system and the electoral process, we see that for as long as you are not in support of the current political party, of the current president, you are bound to a number of things expected and unexpected. So just a color of your cloth can result into imprisonment, life imprisonment, without trial, without any single thing that is allowed of you. So that potential involvement of the military in the political process has made Ugandans lose credibility of the Electoral Commission, because they have tortured, they have beaten people, they have battered men, they have battered women, they have imprisoned the innocent, the guilty, the suspected. Anything really is bound to happen. So one of the most sounding things that have made Ugandans lose credibility of the Electoral Commission is that lack of transparency and fairness. I remember when I was still in high school, we've been participating in the National Students Anti-Corruption Challenge. And the three key things on which this topic is based is transparency, accountability, and anti-corruption. And it has been spearheaded by the IGG, who is Honorable Betty Kamya. But when you're to look at this whole transparency thing, the accountability, the anti-corruption, it is so disheartening that even in those very competitions, the tournaments where we are fighting corruption, the money of the contestants, the money of the participants is sometimes lost in the process. Yet you're made to sign 1,000 documents just to consent receipt of this money. So now that lack of transparency, even in the Electoral Commission, we see that the results that are announced once again at the polling stations contradict so much with those that we hear at the tally center.
Leah, I would like to ask, what do you think would be the recommendations to ensure free and fair, credible elections?
Some of the recommendations to ensure free and credible elections, sorry about that. So some of the recommendations I would give. One, as a Ugandan, you should know the kind of leader you want to vote for. As a person, as an individual, begin by understanding the reason as to why you're choosing a certain member of parliament. Begin by understanding the reason as to why you're choosing a certain person as your potential presidential candidate. Because when we are to look at actually these 2026 elections that are coming up, many people in the creatives industry have come up as contestants. But are they leaders? Are they politicians? Are they opportunists? Know who you want, know who you're choosing for. Because when you're to look at, because your question is that how can we ensure that the election is fair? One, begin by being fair to your own self. Begin by being fair to your own self. Don't choose music. It is not music that is going to represent you. It is not music that is going to lead. It is not music that is going to change, because where there is a true leader, there are signs of development. There are signs of transformation. There is effectiveness that is evident in all spheres of those districts where leaders are chosen. When you're to look at the eastern region, the road network is a road network I haven't seen anywhere else. Not even in Kampala. Ginger Road, Kamuli, and all those places. You reach a place and you're like, oh, so this place has been in Uganda all along. We want to see leaders instead of people that are opportunists in this political game. And on the other hand, to ensure free and fair elections and credible leaders and all those things, we need to at a point embrace electronic voting systems. These ones come with biometric identification, for example, facial recognition, and also fingerprint. For at a point, it saves us of this chaos that is caused by the military. It saves us of this chaos that is caused by the police. Because yes, if I'm in my house and I'm choosing, and I'm voting for a leader electronically, there is no way I'm going to encounter all these hurdles as it is in the physical elections. So at a point, remember, when we are voting leaders electronically, everything is being indicated. Everything is being indicated. But now the query is at that point where the Electoral Commission is now the topmost body that has to air out who the winner is. And at a point when they come out and say it is Leah, it is this one, the general public has no right to refuse, because they have said who are you to object? When you try to object, what happens? You are bound to face any sort of suffering under the hands of the army, the police, the reigning political government, anything. So additionally, we can also adopt rights respecting crowd control protocols. For example, even in the presence of the army, in the polling stations, in the voting centers, and everywhere that is where it is meant to be, just to ensure that security prevails. What if you handled people with peace? What if you handled people with peace? Can't the process happen? Can things be? These personnel need to be educated. They need to be taught what is required of them, instead of what they do out of anger. Sometimes I just don't understand what gets over them. They can batter someone out of the blue, just out of the blue. You're captured, you're beaten, and even when someone is not resisting, you're taken brutally. So that whole process has resulted into the people's loss of credibility in the Electoral Commission. And there is one thing that I would not love to leave out. The Electoral Commission, we are saying it is an independent body. It has that opportunity, it has been given the audacity to set up the whole political process. But right now, if we are to look at what is happening in the country, do we really see them failing to agree with the government that is reigning? Do you think, because this Bukedea incident that has just happened touched me so much, I was actually reading some other articles and a notification popped up. I chose to go through it. I'm like, yes, now these people, some of these members of parliament that have been laid off are people that have already been on the leadership panel of that district even before the coming of the right honorable speaker as a contestant. But as we speak right now, they are not citizens. They are not members of that district. They've never appeared anywhere in the electoral registry. It is such an unfair thing. So there's a lot that is happening in the political field and all these things. How can we even say that as a leader of opposition, you're also a chairperson of justice and constitutional affairs? You're the chairperson of justice and constitutional affairs, but at the same time, you head a certain political party that is an opposition political party. So that means that it has to get back to the Electoral Commission. How can those two things happen at the same time? I'm already in support of the reigning government, but I also lead another political party which is against the reigning government. It is such an irony. So at the end of it all, we do not expect a fair thing. We do not expect anything fair out of that whole process because it's already mixed up. It's already a state of confusion, and therefore, if some other people come from the back and try to question this, there is anarchy that is going to follow. So when we look at the credibility of the Electoral Commission here in Uganda, it is still alarming. It is still, I don't know, we are still in a quest for our rights. We are still in a quest for fairness. We haven't seen the transparency. We haven't seen proper accountability. We haven't seen it happen. And now when I try to look at what is going to happen in 2026, I see a lot, because I don't believe we can change this leadership peacefully. Because according to what I see, everyone that has the potential to take on leadership of this country, right now, I know that the only threat, the biggest threat that the president has ever had on planet Earth is right now behind the bars. The rest of the people are noisemakers. The rest of the people are noisemakers. The people that have come up. We do not even have political parties, by the way. We just have political factions headed by people that want to fulfill personal interests. Because the manifesto thing has been happening, but when you're to look critically at some of them, they do not have a proper work plan for the country. None of them.
Actually, coming to that point, that's actually the question I wanted to pose to Sarah. So thank you very much, Leah. I think Sarah will take on from there.
Welcome.
And the question to Sarah is, how prepared are Ugandans for the elections that are coming in 2026? Because she had already highlighted the manifestos and how these people are coming up unprepared and only doing this to fulfill their personal grievances.
Thank you very much, moderator. As you said, my name is Sarah Angiro from St. Lawrence University, apparently the president of the Young Orators Club in the university. Leah brought a very good point, and it was so much clear that the manifestos, the people who are coming on board for leadership has been so much restricted, more of personal interest than serving the country. She made it so much clear that apparently if there is any leader that would have caused like a pandemic or a sort of fear in the government is apparently behind the bars. So let's make a little small shift. Looking at the 1961, the 1962, the 2005, the 2021 elections, what has been transpiring? What has Ugandans been going through? What has been the questions, the questions that were left unanswered by the Ugandans? So the preparation of Ugandans to come in for the 2026 elections is going to be based on several factors. And on these factors, I'm going to kindly allow me discuss how the Ugandans are prepared in terms of the EC, that's the Electoral Commission, because it's the biggest body we are going to talk about right now. I'm also going to let you know how the government has helped the people, in what way, or if not, what should we do? And then at the end of the day, we shall climb down to how the people themselves are prepared for the upcoming 2026 elections. During the panel discussion from these three members, it was so clearly noted that the EC being brought under Article 60, it had come out to make sure that we have transparency, to make sure that elections go on smoothly. But what has been on table throughout these election processes? What have they been serving Ugandans? What is the mindset? What is the perspective that when we talk about EC outside there, to the voters, to the people who want to make decisions for the leaders, what comes out? So as the EC, they've been doing a lot of things. I appreciate that we look at the updating the voter registrations from 20th January, I think, to 10th February. They've been doing updating because we know from 2021 we have lost a lot of people here and there, the people who have shifted, and that is somewhat I could call an achievement from the EC, that is the Electoral Commission. We are also looking at the demarcation of the electoral areas. They've been moving and making sure this is done. However, the question is, out of the demarcations, out of their outreach to the voters, what percentage of the voters really know what they're supposed to do as voters of 2026, right? So looking at the staff recruitment to work in the elections, yes, who are the people that are being recruited? We believe so much that in a society, there are people who know what exactly is supposed to be done. We have people, for example, let me lower it down because most of the panelists have been bringing it to the presidential level, to the MP level. Let's talk about the LCs, the local councillors, local council 1, 3, or even 5. We find that these are people who are supposed to know what exactly they have to do to the society. So as a Ugandan, to be prepared for the upcoming 2026 elections, I must know who is the leader I'm supposed to. What are the qualities I have to see in a leader? One of the panelists here explained it earlier. you find a particular party bringing either a bus or a form or a means of transport to transport people from one place to go to the polling station. What does that indicate? You can't tell me I am sitting in a transport or in a bus of a political party A and I still get out and vote for a political party B. So what is that trying to bring in the preparedness of the citizens? I want us to drive back to the NRM primaries. I want us to drive back to the political primaries that we had. In the NRM primaries, we had a lot of people who came in, right? They came under the banner. Yes, they wanted to be given the opportunity to represent the party, right? But what happened during the primaries? I want us to take a case study of an issue that trended so much between the members of parliament in Omoro district. That is woman MP, Lemwaka Catherine, and her other opposition contestant, right? In the process, elections were taking place. It wasn't rumors, but it was so much evidence that the time that was given for the, let me say, for the voters' reports, the time that was given for it to be aired out, we all know that working hours start from 8 to 6 in the evening. So how do you expect me as a voter to believe in the results that has been released beyond that time? Let's say 2 in the night, 2 or 9. We get. Literally, me as a voter, I feel like, so what is this? What is being brought out on the grounds? When results are out, no one wants to come on the ground to talk about it. Why? Because they already know there are people. And that has brought us to a point where our fellow panelists talked about it. How can I go to vote when I already know whether I vote or not, my vote won't count? Why? Because I know, because I come from a political party A, I have been in that position, and he is coming from a political party C, there is no way that he will come and stand against me when I have already been in that position, and I am in a political party that is apparently leading the country. That is just a little analysis of what I think basically is driving us to how prepared the citizens of the country are. So I'm going to talk about the government's readiness. So in the government, I'm going to allow me break it into the local government and the central government. In the local government system, through the Ministry of Local Government, people who want to come in for the positions have been advised to kindly lay off their official. For example, if one was already working with the government, what does that bring? They are trying to show us that in the political arena, there is need for transparency, there is need to be serious, there is need for a leader to come for a purpose, which we really appreciate that. But what is behind the scenes? What happens if such a person does not go through? So what comes at the end of the day? Because I am from a political party A, he's from B, and she's from C. We all want that same position. We have already resigned, right? We all have that fear of what if I don't make it? So what if I don't make it? What becomes my stand as a citizen? So what do they go about it? They go down to the people. Some will start using bribes. Some will go into a forceful, right? Some will try to use their backgrounds. And some will use the opportunity that they have been there before and they'll want to maintain it. So literally, as a citizen that has to vote this 2026, I must say I'm so scared. I am so already disappointed because I know even if I am to go as a citizen and choose my own leader, it is a waste. First of all, Leah talked about the threat that we have to the government, apparently. Looking at the opposition members that are outside, looking at the NUP, looking at other parties that are outside, you see that in one way or the other, they head a political party and at the same time, they have what they're doing in the current government. So tell me how a son gets up to come against a father unless otherwise. So literally, I would say the biggest opposition that would bring threat in today's government, that would make someone or a citizen make the right decision, is behind bars. So must we wait until the person behind bars is outside for us to go for the right thing, or should we as citizens take our stand? So looking at the security and police recruitment that has been taking place apparently because of the upcoming elections of 2026, yes, they're trying to make sure that there is protection, there is peace. But is it really that the recruitment of the police and security, is it guaranteed that their recruitment is to ensure our peace? Or we as citizens are so scared that the recruitment of the police and security is to make sure they fit us into a certain sphere of supporting something else? We have been to instances that during voting, you find that if it is an opposition, someone from an opposition talking about it, the person is suppressed, they try to beat and all that. But if they see, it was so clear during the primaries because we had lining, right? You see that because this line is a bit longer and is because, okay, let me say, the long line is for the political party A, and the short line is for political party B. But because I, as a police or a security person, have been employed by political party A, there is no way I'm going to go and cause chaos on that person. Even if that person is causing chaos, there's no way I can stop that person, because why? I need that vote. But let's say there's a problem from the political party B, which is an opposition, which has not given me a job, which is not the one paying for my, you get, it's not the one giving you the salary. So why at the end of the day must you fight? What does it bring to the citizens? It is so sad because people have lost hope in voting. 2001, same story. 2005, same story. 2021, same story. From 1961, 1962, same stories. So how do you expect me to get ready when my grandfather wouldn't do that, when my own parent wouldn't do that? Me as a current citizen of the country waiting for elections in 2026, when even the processes by then that were done by the people who were not yet sounded, by then by people who were not yet enlightened, the people who had not yet known what politics really is, they still went through that threat. Now that we have a threat of people who have understood what politics is, the people who have understood what has to be done in the political arena, do you think me as a voter, I am so satisfied that when I'm voting, my vote will count, especially now that they have advanced in their methods? When I talk about advancement, I want us to look at the EC and the judiciary in conjunction. The EC is said to be an independent body. We expect it as an independent body to have its own source of income. We want it to have its own source of decision. We want it to have its own source of opinion. But what happens when someone brings in complaint? Maybe I'm not satisfied, my vote has been this and that. You know what happens during the elections? What happens? You find that the people in the EC, like the executives, are the same people who have been appointed by the people that have been complained against. So tell me why I would come and stand against a hand that is feeding me, which is so bad. So as citizens of Uganda 2026, outside there are a lot of things that are happening. People are trying to make sure that they come on board. They do what we call information transition. And apparently I saw them doing reforms and demanding accountability through civic awareness. Someone talked about it here. They brought in a program called Totia Gendo Olonde. Yes, meaning we shouldn't fear. Let's go and vote, right? You're sending us to go and vote behind the scenes. Yes, we shall go and tick. They're going to show us, yes, Sarah, you have to tick here, you have to do this. But behind the scenes, am I sure that my vote will really count? Now that we know that most of the positions that are in the EC, most of the people that are so influential in making sure that we have the credibility of the EC are people who are benefiting from the current government.
So, Sarah, do you believe that the people are ready? Are we ready for the elections next year? That's a yes or no.
I would give it a yes, because as I told you earlier, there are recruitments here and there,
Because of the
civic
various
awareness,
things that are
yes,
going
because
on.
of the various preparation processes. But even if it's a yes, are the preparations worth to give us the credit or accountability of the 2026 elections?
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. That has been her perspective and her point of view. Today's discussion has been on the credibility of elections in Uganda since 1961, and our guests have been from St. Lawrence University. They have shared their views, they've shared their perspectives, and we cannot wait to hear what you have to say in the comment section down below. That has been it for our show. I am your host, Sharon Mukisa. Till next time.